Well, today's the day, people. It is impeachment day. We'll give you all the skinny on the chatter back and forth on that. The FBI is pointing fingers and the FISA court's pointing fingers. We'll tell you who's wrong and why. And finally, a boy and his dog. It'll warm your heart. All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. Today is the day. We've been talking about this day for months and months and months. I almost feel like you're super educated on this. Why? Because you watch the show and I'm the one who's dropping all the knowledge on you day after day. I just pour wisdom onto the audience. And you know what I ask for in return? Just your love and adoration. I'll sign autographs for you, take pictures with you if you like when I see you out and about. But today is impeachment day, and I do not want to make light of the fact that the President of the United States of America is about to be impeached. Does it actually matter for this presidency? Well, no, not in that it's just going to reelect Donald Trump, but this will matter in the long run. We've been talking about this all week. Don't forget about that. This is going to be part of the story of the fracturing of America. I'm not being melodramatic. We're not breaking up tomorrow. There's not going to be a civil war and blood in the streets. It's nothing like that. But one day, when the country finally does break up and go its separate ways, this will be part of the story. A hyper-partisan impeachment by a party throwing a massive 3-year-long hissy fit because they lost an election and did not get geriatric Hillary Clinton into the White House where somebody could have carried her up and down the White House stairs. Well, Donald Trump is upset about it. And to be honest with you, I don't sympathize much with politicians. I definitely don't sympathize with the President of the United States of America. That's the big boy seat. If you're not ready for that, then that's too bad. Don't run for office. But as much as I can feel bad for the President of the United States, I do feel bad for President Donald Trump because the truth of the matter is he walked into the White House and he faced a resistance. I don't mean a normal pushback from other parties like people do. He faced an interior resistance from whistleblowers here and the State Department there and this FBI agent and that CIA agent, a special investigation. And you know what? When you look at all of it in the end, the guy really didn't do anything wrong. He's about to be impeached, which is a black mark on your presidency, and the guy didn't do anything wrong. So I can't blame him for being a little upset. He took to Twitter, as he often does, and said, quote, "Can you believe that I will be impeached today by the radical left, do-nothing Democrats? And I did nothing wrong." He loves the capital letters. "A terrible thing. Read the transcripts. This should never happen to another president again. Say a prayer." Well, one, before we move into the second part of all this, he's right. This shouldn't ever happen again, but that toothpaste is out of the tube, as the saying goes, and you're never putting it back again. Donald Trump is, I believe, the third president to be impeached. He ain't going to be the last, people. This frequency is going to pick up and pick up and pick up and pick up. And you know what? Because I'm just that kind of bad person, I'm thrilled about it. I think the Republican Party should walk out there the day after the 2020 election, just so they don't look bad, and say, we're happy Donald Trump was elected to president again, but to consider this our formal notice that the next Democrat president will be impeached immediately upon taking office. That is the world we live in. You can say, we're supposed to be above all that. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know why a United States city has not glowed in the dark from a nuclear weapon from Soviet Russia, from China? Do you know why? Do you really want to know? Because of this beautiful thing called mutually assured destruction, and that if they hurt one of ours, we will hurt one of theirs. It's not because the Russian people just love us and they're that nice. It's not because China, can't bring themselves to nuke a million Americans. It's because they know we will launch ours if you launch theirs. Mutually assured destruction is an underrated thing. The Republican Party should come out immediately today and say, we're impeaching the next Democrat president. Sorry, we'll figure out why when we get there. Anyway, Donald Trump sent a letter to Nancy Pelosi. I'm not exactly sure if he was hoping this would gain any ground with her or if he just wanted this to be in the public record. I've got it divided into 3 parts for you. Why? Because lots of times I talk too fast and my brain moves at such a high speed. It's like this for all geniuses that sometimes people can't catch up. So here's Donald Trump's letter to Nancy Pelosi, quote, "It is time for you and the highly partisan Democrats in Congress to immediately cease this impeachment fantasy and get back to work for the American people. While I have no expectation that you will do so, I write this letter to you for the purpose of history and to put my thoughts on permanent and indelible record. I only read that first part of you because I actually don't know what indelible means, but it sounds like a super important word. So by tomorrow on the show, I'm going to say indelible, and I will have looked it up, and I'll know what it means, and I'm going to feel so superior to everybody. He goes on and says, quote, "This is nothing more than an illegal partisan attempted coup that will, based on recent sentiment, badly fail at the voting booth. You are not just after me as president. You are after the entire Republican Party. History will judge you harshly as you proceed with this impeachment charade." That part he's 100% right about. And this, frankly, has been in an overarching way, the biggest mistake the Democrat Party has made for the last 3 years. They haven't been able to bring themselves to just go after Trump. It's always just underneath the surface, and it's slipped out too many times. They hate you as much or more than they hate Trump. They do. That's turned so many people off. It's turned so many Republicans who weren't Trump people, Republicans who were going to sit out the next election, maybe Republicans who didn't vote for Trump the last time. I can't count how many of those people have approached me and said, "Oh, screw the left. I'm voting for Trump this time." Why? Because they hate me. This is what continues to come out of the left, and you see it every single night on cable news unless you're just watching this show with the Democrat Media Alliance. It's Trump supporters are racist, and the MAGA hat's the new Klan hat, and everybody's evil, and look at these stupid rubes in flyover country. Why can't they just listen to us smart people in the cities? They can't help themselves. They look down on the Midwest. They look down on the Rust Belt that they view betrayed them. And look, all politicians look down on their voters. That's just the nature of the beast because politicians are all scumbags. But politicians are generally smart enough to hide the fact that they hate the people who voted them into office. Democrats have not been smart enough. Democrats are not smart enough. Hence, the party of AOC, who I'm sure still has to wear Velcro shoes. Part 3 of Donald Trump's letter to Nancy Pelosi is this, quote, "By proceeding with your invalid impeachment, you are violating your oaths of office, you are breaking your allegiance to the Constitution, and you are declaring open war on American democracy." Well, first of all, let's just clarify something real quickly, President Trump. The only two parts of the United States Constitution Democrats have even pretended to ever like is "give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free," and separation of church and state. And before you write me a stupid email, yes, I was being sarcastic. I know neither of those parts are in the Constitution. Continuing on. Nancy Pelosi, well, she says she didn't read Trump's letter. You get a letter from the President of the United States. You read it. Quit lying. Anyway, here she is.
Your reaction to the president's letter?
No reaction. It's ridiculous.
You have no reaction? Why not?
No, I haven't really fully read it. We've been working. I've seen the essence of it, though, and it's really sick.
She read it. Nancy, that's the same as every ex-girlfriend tells you when you send her a late-night text one night saying, "Hey, guys, honey, I still miss your brownies. You used to make those were delicious." And she reads it and then deletes it and goes and tells all her girlfriends about it. And then somebody asks her about it one day. "Oh, I didn't even read it. I deleted it." "Oh, you read it. Quit." Well, because Democrats are insane, they had impeachment eve rallies all over the United States of America last night. Now, you may not be aware of this fact, but this really happened. Now, you're not aware of it because you had to wake up this morning and get kids ready for school and go to work and do the things normal Americans have to do. But Democrats don't have any of those concerns. So they took to the streets to hold up street signs, which don't have a vote in the United States Senate impeachment trial. Nevertheless, American scholar Alyssa Milano was on the job.
I mean, this has committed obstruction of justice, abuse of power, bribery, obstruction of Congress, and the American people know this. And we also know the Republicans are picking party over country. They think that we are all so stupid that we'll believe them. Well, guess what? We see right through their lies and because the entire Republican Party has belittled the intelligence of the great people of this country. We are coming for them, and we are coming for their seats.
Well, look, I have to be honest with you because I don't like to always be mean to Democrats. I don't like to always be mean to liberals. I will always have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for Alyssa Milano. Why? Because she's really hot. Now, $1.37 trillion. Do you have any idea how much money that is? Well, that's currently making its way through Congress as we speak, and the President of the United States of America is going to sign it tomorrow. I'm talking $4 billion for the Afghanistan Security Fund. I'm talking more pork and bribes and crap in this $1.3 trillion than you can possibly imagine. So while you should pay attention to impeachment, it's historic, it matters, it's going to be part of our history, all these other things, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, while the Democrats are saying Donald Trump is the devil, while Donald Trump is writing sternly worded letters to Pelosi, and he's the devil, and she's the devil, and this is all partisan, and I took an oath, and you violated your oath, and we shouldn't impeach, and blah, 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 blah. While all those things are going on, when the cameras get turned off, they all go sit down in the same room together and figure out ways to blow all the money you work hard for. That may make you uncomfortable, but I'm right. To talk about that and other things, writer with the Washington Examiner, Tiana Lowe, joins me in just a sec. Hang on. Joining me now to either calm me down or help me rant about all the things I'm upset about today is writer with the Washington Examiner, Tiana Lowe, and show regular, I should say. Tiana, before we get to the spending bill, which has my blood pressure just about through the roof right now, what is all this stuff today? Why is there still a 6-hour debate in the House? We all know how this is going to go. Is there any suspense left? This is going to pass the House. There's no suspense, right? We all know how this goes.
I think the only suspense at this point is if Tulsi Gabbard's going to vote for impeachment or not. You know, she's the only wild card at this point. You know, Democrats, Pelosi got her house in order. They all stepped in line. And meanwhile, the squad is kind of ruining their best case for impeachment for them as we speak. I don't know if you just got the chance to hear the lovely Rashida Tlaib discuss how she's doing this, not for our Ukrainian alliance, but for her boys. You know, day one of her tenure in the House, she said she was going to impeach the MFer, and now she is. So we all know how this is going to end.
Yeah, she seems like honestly, I'm a big fan of the squad. I mean, their politics are horrible, but I genuinely think AOC is probably fun to be around. You wouldn't want her on your team for trivia night or anything like that, but she's probably pretty fun. And, you know, Ilhan Omar has her moments, but Tlaib generally seems like the most unhappy human being I've ever seen in my life.
She does, and it's also clear that she's, I mean, if you want negative partisanship, I think Tlaib is it. And it's fitting for our era because there's obviously the Republican Party is rife with negative partisanship. But as we've seen, a lot of these people don't even oppose specific things about Trump. You know, Al Green walked on to the House floor today to explain his vote. And mind you, this is the guy who wrote up the first articles of impeachment and submitted them in 2017 against Trump. He walks onto the House floor again, not with some sort of symbol of our alliance with Ukraine or some sort of symbol of our democratic foreign policy to oppose Russia and Russian aggression, that he walks on with a poster of that Time magazine cover child from the whole debate about family separation policies in the southern border, which, mind you, even if you think that's a tragedy, that has nothing to do with impeachment, which just shows how little Democrats actually care about the Ukraine issue.
And if memory serves me, that child, if we're thinking about the same cover, that was actually a fake news story as well. The child's parents, I believe, were right beside him or something like that. Of course. All right. Now, you mentioned something about Nancy Pelosi gathering the votes. Do you think they whipped votes? Because I have this theory. It's an amazing theory because it came from me. I have this theory that she secretly wanted this thing to die in the House, that she didn't whip votes, that Steny Hoyer didn't go out there and whip votes because they were hoping they had enough defections to let it die.
I don't know if Pelosi wanted defections, but she made it abundantly clear from the beginning that she did not want to do this. It was the tail was wagging the dog. and Trump just happened to be dumb enough to give her the goods to force her to do it, knowing that it would absolutely fail and die when it goes to the Senate. And honestly, that will vindicate him. As we've already seen in swing state polling, Trump is gaining not just in his own favorables and not just against the most extreme members of the 2020 primary, but against Joe Biden. That should make Democrats shake in their boots. The fact that the most electable candidate is being hurt by their impeachment effort. And so I think that Pelosi just wants this to be done with as quickly as possible. It's why Nadler and Schiff didn't call. They called, what, one witness who actually spoke to Trump during all the events at hand? And they could have subpoenaed others. They could have taken this thing to court. But, you know, this whole obstruction of Congress charge, that just goes to show how little they actually care about the substance of this matter. They couldn't even say obstruction of justice because they did not issue one legally binding subpoena. So they're just saying, oh, if Trump doesn't comply with our request, then you're obstructing Congress. That's not the way the executive branch works. That's not the way executive privilege works.
It sounds like the perfect state of American politics is a mile wide and an inch deep. You mentioned polls. I have this concern that, yes, right now this has all gone very well for Republicans. You actually couldn't ask for anything better. They're completely underwater with independents in swing states, which is all that matters. My concern is this goes to the Senate where Republicans are now in control of things, and they try to get too cute by half, because what we're really seeing with these polls, Deanna, is the American people don't care about this. They want it to end. It's not like they just think the Democrats look stupid, even though they do. They want this to end. I'm worried every senator is going to try for their 15 minutes of TV time, and the pendulum's going to swing the other way against us.
Yes, certainly. And this is why, if the rumors are true that McConnell just wants to push this thing through as quietly as possible, that is the correct call. He should not be listening to Trump, who I know he wants to take out vengeance on the Bidens, and I know that he wants Senate Republicans to subpoena Hunter Biden. That will backfire. Instead, Trump should just claim victory, allow them to vindicate him, and move on. Because the polling trends have been pretty clear. The American people are just tired. It's whichever party manages to make less noise is the one that curries favor with the public. And right now, Democrats are throwing a hissy fit, and the polls are punishing them for that. Republicans cannot go ahead and do the same thing.
I am in a real burn-down Washington, D.C. mood. I have to be honest with you. I don't like Republicans or Democrats because there's a $1.37 trillion bill that's sailed through the House. It's going to sail through all the houses, both houses of Congress, and the President of the United States of America is going to sign it. And there's more pork and crap and garbage in this, and we don't even know what's in it yet because it's over 1,700 pages. Nothing ever changes there. We have two parties that are yelling at each other about impeachment, and everyone looks good on cable news. In the meantime, they're bankrupting the country. Nothing ever changes. The place disgusts me.
Yes, I mean, we have the stupid party and the evil party, and the two parties just rotate in a dance day by day, which one is going to be which. So what do we know about this bill? We know that it extends the Export-Import Bank, which is effectively the federal government's most permanent form of crony capitalism and corporate welfare. Also some that helps out China and helps out other anti-American adversaries. We know that it also increases the tobacco purchasing age to 21. How that's constitutional, how that's remotely covered under the Interstate Commerce Clause, that's beyond me. What does it not do? It does not have any mandates for what the president specifically ran on. There are apparently a couple of victories when it comes to some sort of border construction and border enforcement. But if you look at how much is riding on this bill, you know, I know that the Republican Party is very proud that there have been some pro-life victories, and that's fantastic, but that's not coming from spending. That's coming from HHS policies. That's not coming from Trump's budget when it comes to Planned Parenthood folding. So really the conservative victories in this bill are close to non-existent. Yes, we've recovered a lot of defense spending, but that's happened in years prior. All of this extra fat in this bill, we were promised we weren't going to have to do one more of these omnibus packages. We were promised we'd get good conservative reform. And once again, Washington is failing us. We now have a $23 trillion national debt. And as boomers age out of the workforce, Our Social Security problem's only going to get worse. Our Medicare and Medicaid problem's only going to get worse. We really have two parties, one that's saying, let's just nationalize Medicare and Medicaid, and let's just blow that factor out. And then we have another party saying, our current impossible rate of spending is just fine, but we don't need to increase it too much. Those are unacceptable options.
Now, that is a fact. As the old saying goes, if you want to know what the Republican Party's position is going to be 6 months from now, just look at the Democrat Party's position now. Writer for the
Exactly.
Washington Examiner, Tiana Lowe. Tiana, thanks for giving us some wisdom tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Be good. All right. The FBI and the FISA court are pointing fingers at each other. You did this and you did that. I'll tell you who's really wrong. Hang on. Have you ever talked to somebody about the state of things in Mexico? Why things are so bad in Mexico? Do you know what that person will tell you if you ever talk to them about it? You know what they'll say? They'll say there's no respect there for the rule of law. They've dealt with so many years, decades, a century of corruption. This person's bought off, this person's assassinated, this person's corrupt, that person's corrupt. And therefore, the people now have lost all faith in the rule of law. And they think when a politician, a cop, whoever it may be, they think whenever they're caught with their hand in a cookie jar that nothing's going to happen to them because it's been proven to them time and time and time and time again. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at a danger in the United States of America of getting to that place, and that is an unhealthy place to be for a society. Now, I'll say this. Congress is never going to be popular. A government is never popular. That's the nature of government. You don't like the people in charge. You don't like your boss. You don't like the head football coach of your team. And you never like your government. Monarchs are not popular. Communist governments are not popular. Our capitalist government, or at least formerly capitalist government, it's not popular. It's never been. You have a problem in your life. You walk across the room. You stub your toe. I can't believe it's the government's fault. So I realize that. But there's a difference between disliking your government, between having, a slight mistrust of your government, and having no faith in your government at all. And I think of all the things that the Washington, D.C. people, of all the things they delude themselves with, they think that their current trust with the American people is no big deal. Or they think that they'll come out of it, or they think that there'll be no price to pay. There is going to be a price to pay one day for what is happening in the United States of America. Look, it's been happening for years. You can't put this on just Republicans or Democrats. It's certainly ramped up under Barack Obama. Look at Lois Lerner. She took her position with the IRS and used it to abuse the rights of American citizens. No accountability at all. Hillary Clinton, she obviously doesn't need pointed out. Yes, her accountability was losing a presidential election, but 30,000 deleted emails after a subpoena, massive campaign or massive donations to the Clinton Foundation while you're running for office. A new one was just disclosed from Qatar while she was Secretary of the State. I mean, corruption like you can't believe. Never accountable, nothing. Everything just gets brushed under the rug. Let's not forget Cheryl Atkinson had her computer hacked into by Barack Obama's government. This is still in the court system. Nobody's going to be held accountable. Loretta Lynch meets with Bill Clinton on a tarmac. Nobody's held accountable. These things build in people's minds. I know politicians get it in their heads that, they'll forget about it in a day or two. No, these things stay with people. Which brings me to where we are right now. Let's not forget, amongst all this impeachment nonsense that we've already discussed, let's remember, we have a federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States of America. We have, right or wrong, since I believe the year 1906, we have a federal law enforcement arm, not something the founders ever envisioned. Nevertheless, we do have it. A law enforcement arm with jurisdiction over all 50 states. In fact, more than that, they're in several different countries when they get permission. A very powerful force, a force undoubtedly, history proves it, that can ruin your life or my life with the snap of their fingers. That is a great power. And as Spider-Man's uncle once so famously said, with great power comes great responsibility. And ladies and gentlemen, what am I supposed to make of these things? What am I supposed to make of 17 inaccuracies or incomplete data given to the FISA court. 17 different times. Every single time it was done so the FBI could continue spying or begin spying on an American citizen who has rights. We have an email from the CIA. The FBI asked the CIA, hey, is Carter Page an asset of yours? The CIA writes back, yes, he is. The FBI, delete, delete, delete. Oh, you said no, he isn't. Good deal. We'll go get a warrant. That person needs to be buried under the jail. That person's supervisor needs to be buried under the jail. Now, I try not to get my hopes up because I have no heart and soul and because I'm a resident cynic and I know that nobody in power ever seems to be held to account. But Bill Barr and this Durham guy, they seem hell-bent on actually doing something about the problem, and that's a good thing. But I will tell you this, and I hope they're listening. They better. They absolutely better. Because when you have this kind of corruption, when you have this kind of abuse of the rights of an American at the hands of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, that's not a small thing, people. That's not, well, I mean, look, it's a misdemeanor. It's okay. That is the biggest of big deals. That is Banana Republic state police crap. And we don't do that here in the United States of America. Now, do we though? Because remember back to what I said in the beginning about the rule of law? If these guys are not buried under Fort Leavenworth, how do you have any faith in the rule of law? What's to hold them in check? You see, what happens is the FBI, they get this information, which turned out to be bunk. They knew it was bunk. They never confirmed it. Even after they found out it was bunk, they kept running with it. But they have this information, right? They've got their Steele dossier. And they see the FISA court over there, and they're thinking, man, I'd really love to wiretap an American citizen. I'm going to go down to that FISA court. And they go down to the FISA court, and they present this bunk information to the FISA court, and they get a warrant. Well, apparently everybody in the world gets a warrant with the FISA court because they have, again, I'm not making this up, an over 99% approval rating. Over 99%. So what do you reject? Now, naturally, with all these investigations coming down and the FBI looking like crap and the CIA looking like crap and the FISA court looking like crap, you know the finger pointing's about to start, and the FISA court certainly didn't hesitate to do so. They came out yesterday and they said, hey, this is totally unacceptable. How's the FBI? I mean, they're giving us bad information. That's certainly not on us. We're very disappointed in the FBI, you know, that whole thing. The FBI director, Christopher Wray, came out with maybe the lamest statement I've ever seen in my entire life, talking about this is Christopher Wray, we've taken 40 steps to ensure that this kind of thing never happens again. Now, if I tell you that somebody just committed 10 murders, and I go to the police and I ask them, how are we going to make sure that never happens again? And the police respond by saying, well, look, we've taken 40 steps to make... Does that sound like somebody who's taking the problem seriously? The FBI is not taking this problem seriously. Here's I.G. Horowitz. Listen to what he had to say about the FBI's conduct.
It's either sheer incompetence, intentionality, or something perhaps in between.
So what do you think it is?
We've got so many different people here. First of all, it wouldn't be fair to lump everybody into one because there are different actors coming in at different times. Some people have more touches of this than others. I think it's fair for people to sit there and look at all of these 17 events and wonder how it could be purely incompetence.
It's not purely incompetence. Okay, I've played this game long enough. Let's not pretend that it's purely incompetence. They did this intentionally. The Federal Bureau of Investigation intentionally abused the rights of an American citizen. But we can't let the FISA court off either. Okay, the FBI is corrupt. The FBI lied. The FBI lies. We know this. History tells us this, and recent history tells us this. We know that. But the FISA court is there to approve or not approve the warrant applications, right? I mean, I'm not crazy about this. That's why the FISA court is there. Well, if they never stamp not approved on one, why is it there? Just have a dog in the FBI office and put some ink on his paw and have him stamp approved on every FISA warrant application. And you can say, well, the FISA warrant doesn't know if the FBI's lying. Okay, then throw away the FISA court. What good is the FISA court if they approve everything? I'm dying to know. Maybe we'll get those answers one of these days. All right, we're not done yet. We got more good stuff for you. Hang on. Well, we like to get warriors on this show from time to time. And look, we need experienced people, not just me screaming at the camera because I tend to be wrong about a lot of things. So we bring Jonathan Gilliam on the show, former SEAL, FBI agent, and author of Sheep No More. Jonathan, I'm sure you're going to yell at me for this stance, so just stand by. But I honestly, I see 99% plus approval rating at the FISA court. And I understand the FISA court has its place, but I want to burn down the freaking FISA court. If you're approving 99% of the warrants, then why are you a court? It's just a rubber stamp. Why am I wrong?
Well, I don't think you're completely wrong. I think the FISA court system needs to be definitely closely monitored. And I think the reason why the majority of those warrants are approved is because they're so well scrubbed. I know that there's kind of probably disillusions in that after what happened with Mueller, but the majority of these cases go through intense scrutiny before they arrive to the FISA court to get these warrants. When we look at what happened with Mueller and these types of situations, that's where the power is taken out of the typical on-the-street investigator and the supervisor of that squad, and that power is taken away, and the scrubbing of that evidence is taken away as well, and they circumvent it into the FISA court, which I think that should definitely be looked at. But the majority of these, well, I quite frankly, I'll be honest with you, I've never heard of a FISA warrant being issued for something that I didn't think was plausible and needed to be issued. So the problem is the reputation now is tainted, but I'm here to tell you that these things are usually scrubbed, typically scrubbed, 99.999% of the time they're scrubbed so well by a unit and by a special unit and by the actual squad that it's being worked on that that's why they're approved.
Who, and this is honestly, I don't want to get too technical on it because I'm too stupid to remember all this stuff, but who actually does the scrubbing of it? Is it just, you're an FBI agent, is it just your supervisor? Is it two supervisors above you? Is it two supervisors and a lawyer? Who goes through all these things?
Well, typically, I mean, as the agent that's handling the case, you're scrubbing this stuff as well. You know the law, and you know what you can bring a warrant for or what you cannot. So it starts there. The supervisor will typically check that and work with you and make sure that that it's fitting the parameters that it's supposed to. And then it goes, typically you will have individuals at the field office that will actually look at that. But there is a unit at headquarters that literally looks at this stuff and will kick it back down and say, no, you need to verify this, because typically stuff needs to be verified before you get a warrant for it, especially if it has to do with spying on American citizens. That's what they do take very seriously. And that's why I think that there's so many disillusioned people within this process inside the FBI, because this doesn't make any sense to them how this could have been circumvented and approved. That's something that we really haven't looked at. Who approved this?
Well, we're still waiting for actual word to come down with the investigation that'll have names on it, that'll have dates on it. So I'm going to ask you a bit more of a general question. Who would have the authority to do that? Who would have the authority to take your, application and say, oh, don't worry about the scrubbing, I got it from here? Who does that have to come from the director? Where does that have to come from?
Well, yeah, that's exactly, you got to remember, when you get to a certain rank in the FBI and most federal agencies, you don't continue to make rank. You are pulled up in rank. So in other words, the people at the top will pull people up that they want up there. Now, if you get a criminal element or a subversive element, they're going to pull people up that are like them. And so I think that's what happens. And in this circumstance, when it comes to this actual FISA court approving this, there's no doubt in my mind, in fact, I've talked to certain people, that the agents really, it was out of their hands and went directly into these deputy directors, into these senior executives that were able to circumvent the regular vetting of this process. Because you remember in the government, when you're in there and you're working, the illusion is that the people that are over you know more than you. Well, that's not really necessarily the case. Our directors are typically not agents, so they don't know more than we do. And if they have a nefarious intent, then they're going to be able to circumvent, because their ethics and morals are not like ours.
The FISA court. What is reasonable to expect from the FISA court? If I'm somebody, and look, like you mentioned, I mean, it's so public now, you can't expect the public to just be like, well, I'm sure the FBI will be fine from here on out. If you're somebody in the public, and I'll readily admit to you, I'm one of those people who does not trust the FBI now because of this, what should be reasonably expected of a FISA court, of a FISA judge? Since, I mean, if they can't 100% trust the information the FBI is giving them, but they don't want to approve it, you don't want to be the judge who disapproves something and then something terrible happens. What should happen at the FISA court level if you want to verify the FBI is not lying to me?
Well, first of all, they have to look at the immediacy of and the imminent danger that's involved in this. Is this something that is happening real time, and there must be warrants issued so that they can start looking at these people immediately because something is about to come down, like in terrorism, for instance? That's where the FISA court really got its legs. But when we're talking about what happened with, allegedly happened with President Trump and the way that that unfolded, there was no imminent threat there. So I think that's where the FISA court has to start. They have to say, first of all, is there an imminent threat? Is there a known imminent threat here? And then they have to start kicking things back and saying, we need absolute proof. Who, like if there's a dossier, for instance, that comes in front of them, they should be asking the question, how was this produced? Who produced it? Was it funded? And so on and so forth. I think the FISA court, remember, it's not just judges. It's like everything else in Washington, D.C. Or in the government. They have minions that work for them. These people should be setting up a process to where they know that it's verified and they can better kick it back. The other thing, I think more than anything, is that if somebody applies for a FISA and they have created false evidence or they have pushed things through saying that it's verified when it's not, they should be criminally negligible. And I think that these agents and even the judges and the deputy directors and all these individuals that seem to think that they're protected, I think that they should go to jail for when they do these things. And I think it should be swift punishment.
I agree. I think that's the only way the rule of law comes into play is if an FBI agent is even considering doing this, he knows he's going to get tossed into Leavenworth for the better part of his adult life. I just feel like that, you know, crime and punishment, that's the way it's got to go. Now, tell me about this book before you
remember,
leave.
let me say this one thing. Remember, it's not just FBI agents. Probably the most dangerous organization that we have in the government is the Senior Executive Service. These are individuals that may or may not have come from the agency in which they lead. Sometimes individuals like Phil Mudd, you may have seen him on CNN, was an analyst in the CIA and rode this silver bullet to the top where he's advising the White House. A lot of weird people make it into the White House to advise. And then all of a sudden, after 10 years, he's given a promotion to deputy director within the FBI and the counterterrorism unit. I mean, this is odd. And these types of things and these political appointees, they serve a different purpose. They serve the purpose like Horowitz, senior executive service member, Comey, Clinton. If you look at all these people, they've all covered for each other. McCabe, another senior executive service member, they don't crucify their own. They make 14-minute speeches or 400-page reports, and then they show somebody's guilty, and then they turn around and say, well, they're not that guilty. They just are dumb, you know. So they don't. This is where the real issue lies, and then those are the people that are recruiting their own up. That's the problem.
Figures. The problem's always in the bureaucracy somewhere. Jonathan Gilliam, former SEAL, former FBI agent, thank you so much for giving us some time tonight.
You got it, my friend.
Well, We've got one of these heartwarming videos. Go ahead and grab your Kleenex. I'm sure all you people with hearts are going to cry. I'm not going to cry, though. Hang on. I'll be the first person to admit I feel like America is way too obsessed with dogs. Don't yell and scream at me. I grew up with dogs, love dogs, had to lay on the floor with my dog when he got hit one time, had to bury plenty of dogs. So I understand the love of dogs, but America is obsessed with them. All that being said, I watched this video and I have to tell you, dogs and the bond between a human and his dog, pretty stinking cool. Here's a kid whose dog was lost for 2 weeks. Comes out of school one day, look at what he finds.
Vibrance. Who's coming out? Who's coming out? Who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Who's that? Who's that?
Pretty good stuff there. And we all can agree more good things should happen to the long-suffering Buffalo Bills fans. That's all for the I'm Right tonight. We'll be back to do it again tomorrow. See you then.